Picture a place where ancient gods and artificial intelligence share the same city block. In one moment, someone walks through a temple older than most countries. In the next, bright neon lights flash across streets where 10,000 people gather in complete silence. This isn't just any place on Earth. This is Japan, a country that took every opposite you can imagine and somehow made them work together perfectly. Here's what makes this place so special. Every single day, massive train networks run so precisely that a 30-second delay warrants a public apology. Store workers wrap a simple piece of candy as if it were made of pure gold. But at the same time, over 1 million people live completely locked inside their bedrooms for months at a time. Teenage girls in colorful outfits dance in packed arcades while monks bow silently in temples. Maid cafes serve tea to lonely customers while cherry blossoms fall on glass skyscrapers. These stories aren't separate from each other. They're the complete picture of Japan. Standing in the middle of Tokyo, with 14 million people around, creates an experience of perfect silence. A tea ceremony that hasn't changed for 500 years happens right next door to robots serving hot noodles. But the real mystery isn't Japan's strangeness. The real mystery is how a place built on such perfect order somehow created the world's most powerful entertainment culture. How did a civilization this controlled manage to export imagination to 500 million people across the globe? How did Japan keep its ancient soul while becoming the future? Stay with us, because this journey will change how anyone thinks about Japanese culture forever. The moment someone steps off the plane in Japan, something feels completely different. There's an invisible force in the air that locals call wa, which means harmony. This isn't just some word written in old books. It's like a hidden gravity that controls how every person moves, talks, and lives their daily life. Japan built their entire way of living on one simple idea: the group matters more than any single person. And perfect order isn't something that holds people back. It actually sets them free. Walking through the busiest streets of Tokyo, anyone would expect total chaos and noise. Instead, there's this strange silence that feels almost magical. Millions of people move together, like they're all dancing the same invisible dance. Each person somehow knows exactly where the other person is going. It feels weird at first, like being watched by everyone. Then, it becomes something beautiful. The truth hits like lightning. Nobody is trying to control anyone else. Complete strangers are actually taking care of each other without ever saying a single word. Here's how deep this order really goes in Japanese society. Trains operate so precisely that average arrival delays are measured in mere seconds. Bullet trains pause at platforms for less than a minute, giving hundreds of passengers just a fleeting window to step on and off in silent unison. A worker at any convenience store will wrap one small item with the same careful attention a surgeon uses during an operation. Public bathrooms in Tokyo stay cleaner than most hospital rooms in other countries. This isn't just people being obsessed with doing everything perfectly. This is something called omotenashi, which means caring for others without expecting anything back, built into every single part of daily life. When someone enters a Japanese restaurant, the staff bows deeply from the waist as a sign of respect. When a visitor removes their shoes to enter a Japanese home, this isn't just a rule. It shows respect for the sacred space inside. These small rituals create a culture where everyone constantly thinks about how their actions affect other people. Even the way people stand on escalators varies by region. Tokyo people stand on the left, Osaka people stand on the right. Everyone follows these unwritten rules without question, because group harmony matters more than individual preference. But here's the part that most travelers never get to see. This incredible perfection comes with a hidden price that nobody talks about openly. Social harmony means that individual people's needs always come last in line. Personal emotions must stay completely hidden from public view. Tiredness and stress become private burdens that can't be shared with anyone else. Japan's amazing order is completely real, but it's built on top of invisible sacrifices that millions of people make every single day without complaining. So how did a culture built entirely on restraint and discipline manage to keep anything from thousands of years ago? How did ancient traditions somehow survive right in the middle of the most modern society on Earth? The answer lies in something Japan never actually abandoned. Even when it became the future, it kept one foot planted firmly in the past. While the rest of the world moved forward and threw away its past, Japan did something completely different. They decided to layer everything instead. They didn't replace old traditions with new modern ways. They carefully stacked them right on top of each other like invisible layers of history. Walking through the ancient city of Kyoto shows this layering everywhere someone looks. Ancient temples sit right next to modern shopping centers. Craftsmen who are over 80 years old still work using the exact same techniques their great-great-grandfathers used 1,000 years ago. Picture sitting in a small tea house in Kyoto, where everything feels frozen in time. A tea master slowly performs the exact same ceremony that a famous master named Sen no Rikyu created back in the 1500s. Every single movement stays identical to what happened 500 years ago. Every small gesture carries the weight of all those centuries of history. Sitting in that quiet room doesn't feel like watching some old movie about the past. It feels like actually traveling back in time. The same air that samurai warriors, powerful emperors, and wise philosophers breathed hundreds of years ago fills the room. Here's how deep these ancient traditions still run through modern Japanese life. In small mountain villages, there are artisans who still hammer and fold metal to create swords using methods that haven't changed for over 1,000 years. Shinto shrines scattered across the country perform purification ceremonies that date back to when Japan itself was first founded as a nation. Forest shrines hidden deep in natural landscapes create spaces where the spiritual world feels completely real. Every spring, something magical happens called hanami, cherry blossom viewing. This practice is so incredibly old that it shaped Japanese poetry, philosophy, and even how they organize their entire yearly calendar. When spring arrives, the entire nation literally stops working to sit under blooming trees and think deeply about something called mono no aware, the beautiful sadness that comes from knowing that lovely things don't last forever. Traditional artisans still create hand-painted ceramics, woodblock prints, and woven textiles using methods passed down through families for centuries. Kimono culture remains alive, with people wearing these traditional garments to festivals, weddings, and special occasions. The complex process of tying an obi, the decorative sash, represents hours of study and practice that young women still undertake to preserve this tradition. But here's what makes Japan's traditions so different from museum exhibits in other countries. These ancient ways aren't frozen like old artifacts sitting behind glass. They're completely alive and growing. They change and adapt while keeping their original spirit. A traditional tea ceremony might happen inside a modern cafe in downtown Tokyo. A businessman working in a glass skyscraper follows the same code of discipline and honor that samurai warriors lived by centuries ago. Tradition isn't something dead that people visit on weekends. It's a living language that modern Japan speaks fluently every single day. So Japan managed to keep their past completely alive while building the future. But then, something absolutely explosive happened that nobody saw coming. From deep inside this careful world of quiet rituals and ancient restraint, Japan suddenly created one of the most powerful creative forces in all of human entertainment history. How did a culture built entirely on silence and discipline end up creating anime, manga, and idol culture that captured the hearts of over 500 million fans around the world? Where did this incredible imagination actually come from? Back in the 1960s and 70s, something incredible started happening in small animation studios scattered across Japan's busy cities. Japanese creators began making cartoons that shouldn't have worked according to everything the world knew about entertainment. After World War II, Japan faced a spiritual crisis. The country had lost everything: its military power, its sense of identity, its confidence. Western culture flooded in, but instead of rejecting it completely, Japanese artists did something brilliant. They absorbed American animation techniques, combined them with Buddhist mythology and philosophical depth, and created something entirely new. Anime wasn't an escape from Japanese culture. It was Japanese culture finding its voice in a completely new medium. That's why it resonated globally. Every anime story carries the weight of 1,000-year-old philosophy disguised as colorful entertainment. Today, anime reaches over 500 million people around the world. That's more than the entire population of the United States. Traveling through Japan's cities reveals billboards, shops, and entire districts dedicated to these animated worlds. Akihabara District in Tokyo transformed into a pilgrimage site, where millions of passionate otaku fans travel from every continent to experience the heart of anime culture. Watching something like Studio Ghibli's Spirited Away shows exactly why this cultural explosion happened. This isn't just another animated movie for kids to enjoy on weekends. Every single frame takes viewers on a journey through Japanese spirituality, ancient philosophy, and the universal experience of losing and finding yourself in a confusing world. That single film became the first non-English animated movie ever to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. Here's what makes anime emotionally different from Western animation. Western animation typically focuses on humor, bright colors, and simple stories designed for children. Anime dives deep into complex emotions: loneliness, fear, existential questions about life itself. Characters in anime feel real because they struggle with genuine psychological problems. They experience depression, identity confusion, and the weight of responsibility. Anime doesn't shy away from showing characters cry, suffer, and question whether life is worth living. This emotional honesty comes directly from Buddhist philosophy, which teaches that suffering is part of human existence. Anime accepts pain instead of hiding it. That's why audiences across all cultures connect so deeply with anime characters. They see their own hidden feelings reflected on screen. Here's how massive this cultural explosion actually became across the entire planet. Nintendo, Sony, and Sega built the entire foundation of global gaming culture that exists today. Their headquarters and museums in Japan attract millions of visitors each year. Pokémon started as a simple game about collecting creatures and became the highest-grossing media franchise in human history, worth nearly $150 billion. Manga, Japanese comic books, have become the best-selling graphic novels worldwide. Manga readers buy billions of dollars worth of manga books every single year. Cosplay culture took anime's imagined worlds and turned them into living, breathing identities that people celebrate in every major city on Earth. Walking through Akihabara or attending any anime convention in Japan reveals thousands of fans dressed as their favorite characters. But there's another cultural explosion happening in Japan that reaches 100 million fans globally. Idol culture, where teenage and young adult performers are trained, marketed, and beloved by obsessed fandoms, originated in Japan and now dominates global pop culture. Groups like AKB48 have hundreds of members performing in different combinations. Fans camp outside theaters, buy thousands of copies of the same album to get rare photos, and dedicate their entire lives to supporting their favorite idols. This isn't just entertainment, it's a complete identity and lifestyle. Japanese idol groups now influence the global music industry, with groups forming in Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, and everywhere else. The idol system teaches fans a specific type of devotion and participation that Western pop culture never created. K-pop groups, which dominate global music now, all follow the Japanese idol system model that was perfected over decades. Japan didn't just sell products to other countries. They exported entire universes where people could live, dream, find community, and become obsessed. But here's the most fascinating part that most fans never realize when they visit Japan. These hyper-modern stories still carry the complete DNA of ancient Japan deep in their bones. They're filled with Shinto mythology, about spirits living in everyday objects. Buddhist philosophy about the cycle of life and death appears in every major storyline. The concept of impermanence, that beautiful things don't last forever, runs through every emotional moment. The idol system creates parasocial relationships that reflect ancient traditions of unconditional loyalty to authority figures. Anime looks like pure, futuristic entertainment, but it's actually teaching the exact same spiritual lessons that traditional tea ceremonies taught 5 centuries ago. So Japan created entertainment that conquered the imagination of the entire world. But what about the entertainment and cultures that stay completely hidden inside Japanese society? What strange spaces exist in Japan that travelers rarely discover? Beneath all the perfect order and ancient traditions, Japan contains entire subcultures and social spaces that exist in the hidden gaps of society. Walking through Tokyo's neon-lit districts after dark reveals a completely different world. Capsule hotels, where exhausted salarymen sleep in coffin-sized boxes stacked like storage units. Love hotels, with fantasy-themed rooms rented by the hour. Maid cafes, where employees dressed in elaborate costumes serve tea and attention to lonely customers. host and hostess clubs where people pay significant money just to have someone pretend to genuinely care about their problems. These aren't random anomalies or accidents. They're carefully designed systems that serve specific human needs. Here's what makes Japan so fascinating compared to other countries. These places aren't hidden away in shame or treated like dirty secrets. Japan openly embraces them as normal parts of city life. A capsule hotel isn't viewed as a sign of failure or poverty by Japanese society. It's seen as efficient, practical, and sometimes even desirable for busy workers. This reveals something absolutely crucial about Japanese culture. Unlike most societies that try to hide or judge human desires, Japan creates entire infrastructure systems around them instead. The numbers behind these systems are absolutely staggering. Streets are lined with millions of the country's iconic vending machines, selling everything from piping hot canned coffee to fresh clothing. These automated marvels, alongside Japan's legendary convenience stores, have become a massive global phenomenon on social media, drawing millions of viewers worldwide. Nearby, thousands of massive pachinko parlors light up the night, gambling arcades where the mechanical roar never stops, and millions of steel balls create a wall of constant noise. The loneliness economy has become one of Japan's fastest-growing service industries, generating billions of dollars annually. Hostess clubs employ over 200,000 people across the country. Japan's convenience stores function as 24-hour mini-cities that provide hot food, banking services, and social gathering spaces for people who need human connection. Walking through districts like Shinjuku or Shibuya at night reveals endless floors of these establishments, lighting up entire buildings. The diversity is incredible. There are cafes where customers can pet cats, dogs, or even owls. There are bars where people pay to simply talk to someone who will listen. There are spaces designed around every possible human fantasy, loneliness, or social need imaginable. But here's the deepest truth that most visitors never understand about these strange places. They exist precisely because Japan's public culture is so incredibly restrictive that people desperately need places to escape. The endless order, the social harmony, the constant respect and bowing. It creates enormous pressure inside people's minds and hearts. These strange spaces become the places where people can finally release that pressure in ways their normal daily life never allows. They're not strange because Japan is weird compared to other countries. They're strange because Japan's conformity is so absolute that it creates its own hidden underground world. So Japan created these release valves for the intense pressure of conformity. But what about the most fundamental human ritual that happens 3 times every day? Eating. How does Japan transform something as basic as food into something that feels like an ancient ceremony? Walking into any restaurant in Japan reveals something extraordinary about this country's relationship with food. Here, eating isn't just about consumption or filling an empty stomach. Food becomes ritual. Food becomes craftsmanship. Food becomes ancient philosophy made completely edible. A sushi chef spends 10 full years training before he's even allowed to touch rice with his hands. A ramen shop owner might dedicate his entire adult life to perfecting one single bowl of noodles. Even a convenience store clerk wraps a simple chocolate bar like it's a precious artifact worth thousands of dollars. This incredible attention isn't about perfectionism or showing off skills. It's about deep respect. Respect for every ingredient. Respect for the craft itself. and respect for the person who will eventually eat the food. Sitting in a tiny alleyway ramen shop in Tokyo creates an experience unlike anywhere else on Earth. Steam rises from the kitchen while the chef works in complete concentration. Every movement feels purposeful. When that bowl finally arrives, it contains much more than just noodles and broth. It holds the chef's entire life philosophy. The way he treats each ingredient with reverence. The specific seasons he chooses to source his vegetables from. The complete silence he maintains while cooking is because he genuinely believes the food can feel disrespect from the person preparing it. The quality standards reach levels that seem impossible to visitors from other countries. Japanese convenience store food often tastes better than expensive restaurant meals in other nations. Regional specialties become so incredibly specific that each prefecture takes pride in its own signature dish that exists nowhere else. Seasonal eating gets built into Japanese culture at the deepest level. Different foods appear in different seasons, not simply because they're naturally available, but because the season itself represents a spiritual principle that affects how food should taste and feel. Izakaya culture, small neighborhood bars where food gets shared communally, shapes Japanese friendships and business relationships in profound ways. These intimate spaces, scattered throughout every city, create the social bonds that hold communities together. Sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers while sharing small plates breaks down the formal barriers that exist in Japanese daily life. Street food culture in Japan focuses on presentation and quality, even for items sold from small carts. A takoyaki vendor treats their octopus balls with the same reverence a sushi master treats their fish. But here's the beautiful contradiction that defines Japanese food culture completely. Everything focuses on precision and absolute perfection, yet it remains deeply humble at its core. A bowl of ramen isn't trying to impress anyone with fancy presentation. It's simply trying to nourish the person eating it with genuine care. A piece of sushi isn't treated like a luxury item for wealthy people. It's respect served carefully on a small plate. This captures Japan's entire philosophy compressed into edible form. Beauty achieved through simplicity. Power expressed through restraint. So food reveals Japan's philosophy of care and discipline in every single bite. But beneath all that incredible beauty, there's something much darker hiding. Something that the perfect order, amazing food, and ancient traditions can't hide or fix. What is the quiet pressure that slowly builds inside a civilization this carefully controlled? Walking through Japan's perfectly ordered cities and experiencing the incredible beauty everywhere reveals only half of the story. Japan's amazing order and stunning beauty come with an invisible cost that most visitors never see. There's a Japanese concept that explains this perfectly called tatemahe and honne. The face you show to the world versus the real feelings you never voice out loud. This duality runs so deep in Japanese culture that it shapes absolutely everything. Business meetings, friendships, family relationships, and even how people process grief. Personal emotions must stay completely private, always. Imagine living every single day in a society where every interaction requires perfect composure and control. Showing any vulnerability is seen as a weakness that brings shame to your family, where your exhaustion, your loneliness, your depression, your fears, all of these natural human feelings must stay completely locked inside your heart and mind. This becomes the daily reality for millions of Japanese people walking the same beautiful streets that tourists admire. The statistics reveal just how serious this hidden crisis has become. 1.46 million Japanese people, that's 2% of the entire population between ages 15 and 62, are hikikomori. This means they've completely withdrawn from society and live locked in their bedrooms for months or even years at a time. These aren't lazy people who refuse to work. These are people who literally broke under the crushing weight of social expectation and pressure. Some of these isolated people haven't left their rooms for over a decade. They order food online and communicate only through text messages with their parents. Young people face enormous academic pressure. Entrance exams to top universities determine a person's entire future. Cram schools called Juku force students to study for 12 hours a day. The pressure to succeed academically creates a system where failure feels like personal destruction. This academic pressure continues into work life, where employees must conform to company expectations completely. Karoshi, death by overwork, is an officially documented cause of death in Japan, recognized by the government as a legitimate medical condition. People don't die from a single dramatic event or accident. They die from accumulation, from years and years of working 80-hour weeks without breaks. The deeply embedded cultural belief that leaving work on time shows disloyalty to your company and co-workers creates a system where overwork becomes a moral virtue. Japan's birth rate has fallen to historic lows, just 1.2 children per woman, well below the replacement rate needed to maintain the population. Young Japanese people explicitly tell researchers that work demands and a complete lack of time are the main reasons for not having relationships or children. Entire generations are choosing to opt out of the traditional system that destroyed their parents' health and happiness. Suicide rates remain among the highest in all developed nations, with over 20,000 deaths per year directly linked to social and work pressure. Traveling through Japan's neighborhoods means walking past thousands of homes where this silent suffering happens behind closed doors. The perfectly maintained gardens and clean streets hide the reality of people who simply couldn't handle the pressure anymore. A new generation of young Japanese professionals now actively rejects the company loyalty that completely defined their grandparents' lives. They explicitly demand paid leave and mental health support as basic rights. They refuse to sacrifice their lives for corporate success. This represents a massive cultural shift happening in real time across Japan. So this invisible pressure accumulates in complete silence throughout Japanese society. But Japan also holds a 1,000-year-old answer to suffering. Not a magic solution that makes pain disappear, but an ancient philosophy that teaches how to live inside pain without being completely destroyed by it. While the rest of the world desperately chases permanence and tries to make everything last forever, Japan made a completely different choice. They decided to embrace impermanence instead. The philosophy is called wabi-sabi, which means understanding that nothing lasts. Everything eventually decays, and that's exactly where true beauty lives. Walking through Japanese gardens and temples reveals this philosophy everywhere. A cracked ceramic bowl becomes more beautiful when repaired with golden lacquer because it shows the history of breaking and healing. A moss-covered stone sitting in a garden holds more profound meaning than a perfectly polished one. Autumn leaves falling from trees aren't viewed as a loss. They're seen as a precious gift from nature. This philosophy didn't grow from optimism or positive thinking. It came from deeply understanding suffering and finding meaning within it. This ancient philosophy isn't just abstract poetry written in old books. It actually governs how Japanese people move through their daily world. Cherry blossom viewing becomes a mass meditation on beauty that's completely fleeting. Every spring, millions of people gather under trees to watch flowers bloom and die, finding holiness in that natural cycle. Temples are designed with enormous amounts of empty space because silence is considered more beautiful than constant noise. Traditional gardens are carefully pruned to look completely natural because perfect control is less beautiful than the appearance of imperfection. Forest shrines, hidden deep in natural landscapes, create spaces where the spiritual world feels completely real. Ancient trees surround these shrines, creating a boundary between the mundane world and the sacred space. Walking through these forests to reach shrines feels like a spiritual pilgrimage into nature itself. The concept of ma, negative space, gets used in Japanese art, architecture, and design because what you don't show is often more powerful than what you do show. Wabi-sabi comes directly from Buddhist and Shinto teachings that have shaped Japanese culture for over 2,000 years. The philosophy directly addresses impermanence, the Buddhist concept of anicca, which teaches that all things are temporary and that accepting this truth is the path to inner peace. Traditional tea ceremonies were originally designed by Buddhist priests as a spiritual practice, not just a social ritual. Here's what makes this philosophy absolutely revolutionary compared to Western thinking. It doesn't offer false comfort to people who are suffering. It doesn't promise that everything will be okay, or that pain will magically disappear. It says, everything will end, and that ending is beautiful. This is exactly what a high-pressure culture needs to hear. Japan's modern anxieties and social isolation are deep, painful fractures in society. But philosophies like wabi-sabi teach that these fractures don't mean a life is ruined. Much like pottery repaired with gold, the struggle and the slow process of healing are what make a human story truly profound and meaningful. Accepting that changes everything. Experiencing Japan firsthand reveals this integration happening everywhere. A hypermodern Tokyo skyscraper stands right beside a 2,000-year-old shrine. The shrine isn't preserved as some old relic for tourists to photograph. It's actively worshipped every single day. Tourists and businessmen and grandmothers stand together inside, bowing quietly, accepting impermanence, finding inner peace through imperfection. Modern Japan didn't reject its spiritual past to become futuristic. It absorbed those teachings completely and kept moving forward. The numbers behind this spiritual integration are absolutely stunning. Shinto shrines receive visits over 100 million times per year throughout Japan. Approximately 70% of Japanese people practice Shinto or Buddhism, often both simultaneously, a combination that would seem impossible to Western religious thinking. Meditation and mindfulness practices, rooted in ancient Zen Buddhist traditions, have become global wellness movements directly influenced by Japanese spiritual practices. Japanese aesthetics like minimalism, empty space, and natural materials have become the dominant design philosophy of the modern world because they're rooted in deep spiritual principles. Here's the deepest truth about Japan's success. Japan's future isn't built on rejecting the past completely. It's built on synthesis, combining everything together. Japan's technology gets spiritually informed by ancient wisdom. Japan's modernity stays historically rooted in tradition. Japan's path to happiness doesn't come from choosing between ancient and modern ways. It comes from refusing to choose sides. And that refusal is itself a spiritual practice. Japan didn't become globally influential by copying what every other country was doing. It became influential by being completely unlike anywhere else on Earth. Walking through Japan's cities reveals exactly why the world became obsessed with this place. Japan answers a question that modern life keeps asking everywhere. How do you stay human inside a machine? How do you preserve beauty inside speed? How do you honor the past without being imprisoned by it? Japan found answers to these impossible questions. Imperfect, contradictory, sometimes painful answers, but real answers nonetheless. The statistics behind this global obsession tell an incredible story. Japanese tourism has reached historic heights, welcoming over 40 million international visitors annually. Together, the global anime and manga industries drive a powerhouse economy, generating well over $50 billion in revenue every single year. But this global footprint extends far beyond entertainment. Japanese design, minimalism, simplicity, natural materials, has become the global standard for contemporary aesthetics. Japanese philosophy, Zen Buddhism, wabi-sabi, the concept of harmony, has directly influenced Western medicine, psychology, and architecture. Every continent now has passionate anime fans, cosplay communities, and millions of people actively trying to understand Japanese culture. Japanese street fashion has conquered global culture. Harajuku fashion, with its colorful kawaii aesthetic and creative street style, influences fashion designers worldwide. Teenagers across America, Europe, and Asia copy Japanese fashion trends from social media. Shibuya's chaotic street style and Tokyo's avant-garde fashion scene have become the standard that Western fashion houses try to copy. The Japanese emphasis on creating a unique personal style within social harmony paradoxically creates more individual expression than Western fashion culture does. Decora style, with its explosion of colorful accessories and clips, represents a form of rebellion expressed through cuteness, a distinctly Japanese invention. Japanese vending machines have become a global internet phenomenon. Videos of Japanese vending machines selling everything imaginable go viral constantly. The efficiency, variety, and accessibility of Japanese convenience culture fascinate people worldwide. People watch endless TikTok videos of Japanese convenience store hauls, vending machine tours, and daily life efficiency. This internet obsession with Japanese daily life reveals something deeper. The world recognizes that Japan solved practical problems that other countries still struggle with. Convenience culture in Japan reflects ancient values of omotenashi, caring for customers' needs before they even know they have them. Anime content has become so dominant on global social media that Western creators copy anime aesthetics and storytelling techniques. Manga influences the global comic book industry. Japanese video game design philosophy shaped how the entire world makes games. The Nintendo Switch's innovation and design directly came from the Japanese understanding of the balance between portability and functionality. Japanese technology companies dominate global markets not just through superior products, but through design philosophy rooted in wabi-sabi principles. Traveling to Japan reveals something that tourists from every country notice immediately. The streets feel different. The interactions feel different. The pace of life feels different. People move with purpose, but without anger. Technology exists everywhere, but doesn't dominate human connection. Ancient temples sit next to futuristic buildings without any conflict. But the global obsession reveals something much deeper than simple tourism or entertainment. The world isn't obsessed with Japan because it's exotic or completely foreign to understand. The world is obsessed with Japan because in Japan's contradictions, people see themselves, their own longing for order and chaos, their own hunger for beauty inside modernity, their own desire to stay human while becoming more efficient and technological. Japan shows that the future doesn't have to be cold and disconnected. It can be warm, purposeful, and deeply human. Japan didn't become unique by choosing one path and rejecting all the others. Japan became unique by completely refusing to choose sides at all. It said yes to modernity and yes to tradition, yes to silence and yes to chaos, yes to order and yes to fantasy, yes to discipline and yes to escape, yes to conformity and yes to idol worship. Every other civilization throughout history chose between opposites and picked one side. Japan weaponized them instead. It turned contradiction into architecture. It built an entire society on holding everything together at the same time. Walking through Japan reveals the truth that changes everything. The thing that seems strange about Japan isn't strangeness at all. It's wholeness. While the rest of the world built walls between past and future, between public and private, between emotion and discipline, Japan built bridges instead. Japan didn't reject the old world to become new and modern. It absorbed everything and kept moving forward without ever letting go of what came before. That's not a contradiction. That's pure genius. This is what Japan teaches the entire world through every temple, every train, every tradition, and every neon light. You don't have to choose between being ancient and being modern. You can be both at the same time. You don't have to choose between caring deeply and maintaining boundaries. You can do both without conflict. You don't have to choose between honoring tradition and embracing change. You can honor both and grow stronger. Japan's contradiction isn't a flaw that needs fixing. It's the template for how to stay human inside a machine. And that's exactly why the world became obsessed with this place. People feel it when they watch anime stories about ancient spirits in modern worlds. People feel it when they walk Tokyo's busy streets filled with shrines tucked between office buildings. People feel it when they sit in a traditional tea ceremony right beside a glass skyscraper. Japan doesn't teach that one way of living is right and others are wrong. It teaches that living fully means holding contradictions together without flinching. That's the incredible gift Japan gives to the world: permission to be completely complicated. Standing in Japan brings the original feeling full circle. Someone arrives feeling the contradiction. Neon lights beside ancient shrines, perfect silence beside crowds of millions, ancient traditions beside futuristic technology, spiritual wisdom beneath cutting-edge innovation. But now, the truth becomes clear. That's not Tokyo being confused about what it wants to be. That's Tokyo being exactly what it set out to become: a civilization that completely refused to abandon its soul. A world that learned to breathe in two different timelines at once. So the question isn't how Japan became so strange and different. The real question is, why do people find wholeness so strange? Why does holding contradictions feel so foreign and uncomfortable? What would our own lives look like if we stopped choosing between who we were and who we're becoming, and just became both? Japan is not a place someone visits and forgets. People carry it with them forever. The silence of a midnight train, the care of a stranger wrapping chocolate, the beauty of accepting that nothing lasts. Japan shows that civilization doesn't have to choose between soul and speed. Here's what Japan teaches. Order and chaos are partners. Ancient and modern are dance partners. Every contradiction Japan holds is permission to stop choosing, to be complicated, to be whole. If Japan calls to you, save this video. Share it with someone who needs to know wholeness is possible. Drop a comment. Which contradiction fascinates you most? The temples beside the neon, the silence inside chaos, the idol culture that emerged from ancient discipline, the vending machines that solve convenience while remaining humble. What moment made you feel like you were inside another world?